Good day, Luis and Gems. How was your third week of uh, being learners of personal development? I hope you are becoming more aware of yourselves and on the process of becoming mature individuals. Having said that, today we are again to embark ourselves in learning about the stages of personality development and also the tasks and challenges that are being faced by individuals like you, the youth, and the adolescents. So for this discussion, the learning outcomes are the following. That at the end of our discussion, you should be able to determine the 8 stages of personality development, discuss the conflict or crisis experienced by adolescents, and describe the social behavior of adolescents in different genres. Now, do you remember the time when you start noticing physical changes in your body? Like the growth of hair in your armpits, pubic area, the increase in height, and for the males, the deepening of voice. For females, it is the start of their menstruation period and the developing of their body parts. Okay? These physical changes mark of what we call the onset of puberty and the beginning of the adolescent stage of the human development. But what do we really know when we talk about the concept of adolescence, which happen between childhood and adulthood? The term adolescence came from the Latin word adolescere, which means to grow or to grow to maturity. And it has a broader meaning. Okay? It includes the mental, emotional, social, and even spiritual maturity as adolescents develop physically. Because in this period, it is the transition between childhood and adulthood. And because this is a transition, okay, it includes then some big changes, not only to the body, but also to the way a young person relates to the world. Okay? Not only to the body, but to the way a young person relates to the world. Yan. And understanding what to expect at different stages in this period can promote healthy development throughout adolescence and into early adulthood. Because remember, adolescence really is the period of human physical and psychological development that occurs between, as I said, the onset of puberty and adulthood. Okay? Having said that, adolescents like you are young people who are going through the period of human psychological and physical development that occurs between the onset of puberty and adulthood. But what must we remember here when we talk about the concept of adolescence is this phrase, okay? That we grow to maturity. Meaning to say, we do not only undergo physical development, but also the other aspects of human development in order for us to grow to maturity. Now, John Piaget said that psychologically, adolescence is the age when the individual becomes integrated into the society of adults. And it is also the age when a child no longer feels that he is below the level of his elders, but of equal, okay, at least in rights. So, John Piaget then, okay, talk about adolescence period as the integration to adult society, okay, which has many effective aspects that include the very profound intellectual changes that may happen or that are happening in this adolescent period. Okay? And these transformations will enable an adolescent to achieve his integration into the social relationship of adults. Meaning to say that in this period of transition, the adolescence period, the youth are seeking for a validation. Okay? And they wanted to be identified not anymore as children, but already becoming a member of the adult society. Because there are really many changes that may happen or that will happen in this period. Not only physically, but also psychologically. And we will learn about that as we go on with our discussion. Now, let us talk about the adolescent years. Okay? Adolescence is generally divided into two subdivisions based on the works of Faith and Rosenberg. Okay? And those two divisions are the early adolescence and the late adolescence. Yan. And for Faith and Rosenberg, they peg early adolescence at age 11 or 12 and late adolescence at about 18. And American psychologists differ slightly with their age definition of adolescence. So if you are going to observe, in America, a child is usually out of the house by the age of 18 because in that country, the age of 18 is the age on how they define young adulthood. They are treated to be a member or a new member of the adult society. Kaya nga, di ba, naririnig natin na yung mga kabataan sa Amerika, if they reach the age of 18, they wanted to be independent, literally, di ba, that they wanted to be out of the shelter of their parents and they build their own independence. Ganyan sa Amerika. Okay? But in the Philippines, our setup is very different. And the adolescent years, okay, are divided into three. Okay? In the work of Corpus and his co-authors, the ages during adolescence may be bracketed as follows. We have the early adolescence. Okay? Yan. And early adolescence can also be called preteen or the twin stage. Yan. It is the time when you enter the stage of puberty at the age 10 to 13. And it is also considered as the most uncomfortable period of physical growth and sexual development. Because an adolescent who is experiencing the onset of puberty may really find it irritating the changes that are happening in his or her body physically. Okay? And this is also the stage, or this stage, the early adolescence, is often over during the middle adolescence. When an adolescent enters the age of 14 to 16, that adolescent is already ending the early adolescence and entering the middle adolescence stage or period. Okay? In middle adolescence, it is also called teenage. Kung kanina is preteen or preteen, in the middle adolescent stage, it is already called teenage. And this is the stage consisting of emotional and psychosocial development. Meaning, this is the stage in which teens are searching for their identity. Okay? And the stage where teens are beginning to assert their independence. Kaya nga, if you're going to observe again, in this period, ages 14 to 16, lagi tayong nasasabihin ng mga matatanda na sa ganyang edad, nagiging pasaway daw ang mga kabataan. Well, actually, we can answer that by saying that in this stage, an adolescent really asserting his or her independence. Okay? Because that adolescent is in search for his or her identity. Yan. And then, after the middle adolescent stage, here comes the late adolescence. And the adolescents here are already called young men or young women. Teens here are already finding their way through the social scenes. Yan. And expected to act independently. And in this stage, teens or young men and women are already looking for a romantic relationship. And that's according to Corpus and his co-authors. In this stage, 17 to 20 years old. Kayo ba? Kailan kayo nagkaroon ng romantic relationship? If in case you have, nag-start ba yan during the early adolescence? Sobrang maaga. Even in middle adolescence daw, dapat hindi mo na priority, diba, ng isang kabataan ang paghahanap ng romantic relationship. Yan. So, we can see here the difference when we talk about the adolescent years, okay, in the works of American psychologists and the works of the Filipino psychologists. But somehow, there are similarities, okay, in these adolescent years. Now, let us discuss about the 8 stages of psychosocial development of ERIKSON. Actually, some may call this as 8 stages of personality development, and some are also calling this as 8 stages of human development. But in the words of ERIKSON, okay, we call this as 8 stages of psychosocial development. Okay? And what do you know about this psychosocial development? Actually, this is a theory. Okay? A theory of psychosocial development created by ERIKSON and considered to be one of the best-known personality theories. Why? Because this theory differs from many others in that it addresses development across the entire lifespan of a human being from birth until death. Sabi nga nila, from womb to tomb. Okay? And at its stage, the individual deals with a conflict or crisis, okay, that serve as a turning point in development. And when the conflict or crisis is resolved successfully, the person is able to develop the psychosocial quality associated with that particular stage of development. Okay? So, to know more about these stages of psychosocial development, let us now learn, okay, the different stages, including the crisis or conflict being confronted by the individual undergoing these stages, and the major events that occur during each point of development. Now, ERIKSON's 8 stages of psychosocial development define each stage of human development with a crisis, as I said a while back, okay? With a conflict or crisis. And there is human progress through 8 stages of development over the course of the lifespan of an individual. And in each stage, a unique developmental task confronts an individual with a crisis that must be faced and resolved. Okay? And the more successfully an individual resolves the crisis, the healthier that person's development will be. Let us now know and learn about this crisis, okay, and how an individual may overcome this crisis in his or her period or lifespan, okay, in his lifespan. The first stage is trust versus mistrust. And this stage occurs between birth and approximately 18 months of age. The psychosocial crisis is trust versus mistrust. The major question here, can I trust the people around me? The basic virtue that can be developed is the virtue of hope, and the important event that happens in this period or stage is feeding. Okay? Now, according to ERIKSON, the trust versus mistrust stage is the most important period in a person's life. The most important period in a person's life. Okay? So when a baby cries, it's either they are hungry, or gusto nila magpabuhat, or baka naman yung diapers puno na ng ihi, or naitae na. Okay? And so, by responding quickly whenever the baby cries, a foundation of trust is established. Okay? Yan. And when this need is consistently met, okay, the important event is consistently met, the child will learn that he can trust the people who are caring for him. If, however, these needs are not met or not consistently met, the child will begin to mistrust the people around him. Now, what will happen if that's the case? According to ERIKSON, ERIKSON believed that those who learn to trust caregivers in infancy will be more likely to form trusting relationships with others throughout the course of their lives. So nag-uumpisa pala sa pagkabata. Okay, according to ERIKSON, that a person will learn how to trust or mistrust. And if that happens, okay, that person may either have a successful relationship or successful in building a relationship, or okay, there will be mistrust in that relationship. Either way. Okay? Now, the second stage is autonomy versus shame and doubt. And it happens at early childhood of 18 months to 3 years old. And the psychosocial crisis here is autonomy versus shame and doubt. The major question, can I do things myself or am I reliant on the help of others? The basic virtue that can be developed is the virtue of will, and the important event is toilet training. Yeah. Now, gaining a personal control is an important aspect or event at this stage. So, toilet training plays a major role, and learning to control one's body functions leads to a sense of independence. So, as the child enters the toddler years, gaining a greater sense of personal control becomes increasingly important. Okay? Now, tasks or activities such as learning how to use the toilet, selecting foods, or choosing toys are the ways that children can gain a greater sense of independence. Kaya nga sinasabi sa stage na to, hayaan mo ang bata na mabasa, hayaan mo na madumihan, ba? Hayaan mo na maglaro habang bata pa. It's because in this stage, okay, allowing a child to do this kind of task like toilet training, okay, choosing what they want, food or toys, will make them feel and develop the sense of will and independence. Okay? So kayo ba, nung bata kayo, nahayaan ba kayong magtampisaw sa ulan? Okay? Nahayaan ba kayong maglaro ng tagu-taguan? Or baka naman sobrang protective ang parent, kaya kung minsan ayaw nila kayong palaruin. If that's the case, either you will develop autonomy or you will develop shame and doubt. The third stage, okay, the third psychosocial stage is known as initiative versus guilt and occurs between the ages of about 3 and 5. And the social crisis here is initiative versus guilt. The major question, am I good or bad? The basic virtue that can be developed is the virtue of purpose. And the important event or events are exploration and play. And now, this stage is centered on developing a sense of self-initiative. And children who are allowed and encouraged to engage in self-directed play will emerge with a sense of strong initiative, while those who are discouraged may begin to feel a sense of guilt over their self-initiated activities. Okay? So somewhat after the transition period of the second stage, okay, in this third stage of human development, the virtue of purpose is more profoundly being developed, and the activities or important events, exploration and play are more being given to a child, okay, to allow him or to allow her to really develop, okay, this sense of self-initiative. Yan. And then during the middle childhood, between the ages of about 6 and 12, children enter what we call the psychosocial stage known as industry versus inferiority. And that is the social crisis. Okay? The major question here is, how can I be good? The basic virtue to be developed is competence, and the important event is attending school or schooling. Yan. Now, as children engage in social interaction with friends and also with academic activities at school, they begin to develop a sense of pride and accomplishment in their work and abilities. Yan. And children who are praised and encouraged to develop a sense of competence, okay, will likely to really develop what we call the virtue of competence, and they will also develop the sense of pride and accomplishment. But for those who are discouraged, are left with a sense of inferiority. And so it is also very important in this stage that children here, okay, the middle children, must have to be encouraged, okay, to really work with competence so that they can develop their sense of pride and accomplishments and eventually the virtue of competence. Ang iniwasan natin dito is that when you are being discouraged, for example, in this certain period, there will really be a possibility that you will develop the sense of inferiority. Okay? Yan, the opposite of industry or sense of superiority or accomplishment and pride. In the fifth psychosocial stage is centered on identity versus role confusion. And the major question is, who am I? The basic virtue to be developed is fidelity. And the important event here that must have to take place is building social relationships. Yan. And at this point in development, the formation of a personal identity becomes critical. And during adolescence, teens explore different behaviors, different roles, and different identities. And so, ERIKSON believed that this stage was particularly crucial and that forging a strong identity among adolescents will serve as a basis for finding future direction in life. And those who find a sense of identity will feel secure, independent, and ready to face the future. While those who remain confused may feel lost, may feel insecure, and unsure of their place in the world. But what do we really mean when we talk about identity versus role confusion? Kailan ba talaga nagkakaroon ng role confusion ang isang individual at this stage? Okay, between 12 to 20 of age. So let us talk about identity versus role confusion. To identify and have an understanding about the crisis of identity versus role confusion, let us first define what is identity and what is role. Okay? Identity is the concept of an individual about himself and is often referred to as self-identity. And the self-identity is developed or molded through various interactive experiences around that individual or that adolescent. Okay? Such as interactive experiences of that individual to his or her family, to his or her friends, the community, and also his or her thinking, attitude, and behavior to external environment or to external stimuli. Okay? Yan. And role forms part of this self-identity, such as your birth order in your family, the nature of your work, okay, of your school, if you are still attending school, for example, or if you already have work in your workplace, your occupation or title, and academic and social standing. So role is very important then, okay, in finding self-identity of an individual or of an adolescent. Because the adolescent may play many and different roles, not only inside his family, but also in the society. And there must be a clear understanding of these different roles of an individual, because if not, that individual may have what we call role confusion. And so what is role confusion? Role confusion is the negation of self-identity. In a sense, that there is confusion over an individual's self-concept or the lack or absence of such concept. And role confusion affects an individual's relationship with others because there is no clear definition of what he is and how he relates to others. And so, ERIKSON believed that the primary psychosocial task of adolescents in this period is to establish an identity and to have a clear role, okay, a clear concept of his or her role in the society. Because in this stage, teens struggle with the question, who am I? Okay? This includes questions regarding their appearances, okay, their vocational choices and career paths or aspirations, education also, relationship, their sexuality, and also abstract concepts like political and social views, personality, and even interest. And ERIKSON observed this period as a period of confusion and also of experimentation regarding identity and one's life path. Okay? And those who are unsuccessful at resolving this stage may either withdraw further into social isolation or, as they say, okay, that individual become lost in the crowd. Yan. However, more recent research, okay, suggests that few individuals or adolescents live this age period with identity achievement. Kakaunti lang daw. In more recent research, okay, researchers argued that in this period, kakaunti lang daw yung mga kabataan talaga na successfully achieve their self-identity, okay, upon closing this period in their lifespan. And that most identity formation occurs during young adulthood already. But what is important here in this period is that an adolescent must have to have a clear concept of his role so that he will have a sense of self-identity as he goes along, okay, these stages of psychosocial development. Di masamang ma-confuse. Okay? Actually, nangyayari yan sa lahat ng mga taong nag-undergo in this stage of psychosocial development. What matters most is you overcome this role confusion and you will come out with a clear role in the society as you move along the stages of human development. The sixth psychosocial stage is centered on intimacy versus isolation. Yes, and it focuses on forming intimate, loving relationship with other people. That's why the psychosocial crisis here is intimacy versus isolation. And the major question, will I be loved or will I be alone? And the basic virtue to be developed here is the virtue of love. And the important event is building or creating romantic relationships. That's why in this stage, dating, the concept of dating, marriage, family, and friendship are important concepts during the intimacy versus isolation stage. Because by successfully forming loving relationship with other people, individuals are able to what we call experience love, okay, and enjoy intimacy. But those who fail to form lasting relationship may feel isolated and alone. Yan. So the crisis to be resolved here is isolation. So that you will really, if you overcome this crisis, then you will enjoy the benefit of having intimate relationship with your loved ones later on. Okay? The seventh stage is generativity versus stagnation between 25 to 65 years old. Yan. Now, once adults enter the generativity versus stagnation stage, that occurs during middle adulthood, the psychosocial conflict becomes centered on the need to create or nurture things that will outlast the individual. Like, for example, raising a family, okay, the importance of work, and contributing to the community are always that people develop a sense of purpose. Yan. That is why, in here, the major question is, how can I contribute to the world? And the basic virtue to be developed is care. Because in this stage, the person is already asking, how can I show care to my society? How can I contribute to the world? Yan. And the basic or the important event here, they are parenthood and work. Yan. Now, those who fail to find ways to contribute may feel disconnected and useless and feel stagnant. And that's why in this state, it's very important for an individual to really know how he or she can contribute for the betterment of the society. And it is through parenthood that the basic step in giving care to the world is by also taking good care of the family and giving importance to work. Okay? And the final psychosocial stage is known as integrity versus despair. And it begins around the age of 65 and lasts until death. Okay? And during this period of time, the individual looks back on his or her life. There is what we call a reflection. And the major question is, did I live a meaningful life? Yeah. And the basic virtue to be developed is wisdom. At this age, siguro naman, di ba? Wisdom has already been developed by an individual. And the important event is reflecting back on life. And those who will have, or those who have, feel a sense of peace, a sense of wisdom and fulfillment, even when facing death, will have what we call a happy death. Okay? But for those who look back on life with bitterness and regret, feelings of despair may result into the crisis of despair. Okay? Kaya when we reach this age, I hope we are already reflecting, okay, to the things that we did that give meaning to our lives, so that even if we will face death later on, then we will die with a happy death. Okay? Ganyan naman talaga ang buhay, di ba? From womb to tomb. The question is, in that span of life, had you created meaningful experiences and events? Had you shared something or contributed to make the world a better place? Yan yung mga magiging reflection later on when we reach this stage. Okay? But not all people reach this stage. Okay? Kasi nga, there are factors that will really hinder a person to reach, okay, the last stage of psychosocial development. Kasi may mga untimely death, meron ding mga death because of this pandemic, for example, sickness, health issues. Kaya may mga tao hindi maabot or natatapos yung psychosocial stage ni ERIKSON. At syempre, we cannot avoid criticisms of the psychosocial theory. And one of the major criticisms of the psychosocial state theory is that these stages do not necessarily follow a sequential order. People can experience these developmental changes and challenges at different points in their lives. For example, the challenges of intimacy versus isolation. These challenges are not just restricted to the period of early adulthood, because these are issues that can affect people not only at this stage, but also all throughout life, even into old age. Okay? Or the challenges to identity. Okay? The challenges to identity can also take place outside of the teen years. Okay? As I said a while back, that in recent researches, the stage of self-identity versus role confusion, few individuals can really achieve, okay, self-identity, okay, before they will really move to another stage of psychosocial development. Sabi ko kanina, kakaunting mga kabataan daw, according to a research, ang talagang full successfully achieve a self-identity. And most of these people can already achieve that self-identity in their early adulthood. Yan. Now, it is also important for us to remember that ERIKSON's theory of psychosocial development represents just one theoretical framework. Okay? One theoretical framework to describe how development takes place. While research has shown support for some aspects of the stages, okay, such as the importance of involvement in work, relationships, community, engagement, okay, this does not mean that every aspect of the theory is a fact. However, these stages can be a helpful way to think about how people change throughout life, and some of the typical challenges can also be identified, okay, in these stages of psychosocial development that an individual may face at different points in their lives. Yan. Now, it's time for us to discuss about the changes during adolescence. Biologically, adolescence is a period of development that stretches from the onset of puberty through the termination of growth. Okay? And the adolescent's physiological transitioning is very pronounced at this stage. Okay, the physical development is very prominent at this stage. Okay, and no matter how you define adolescence, okay, it is a time of great challenge and great change. It is a time of great change and great challenge, and a very vital period that will determine how a person will view and interact with the world as an adult. Okay? And puberty kicks in and is fueled by the hormonal changes that are occurring and pushing adolescent toward what we call sexual maturation. Okay? Dito natin sinasabi yung sikat na term ngayon na when puberty kicks in. Okay? When puberty hits you hard. Yan. Because in here, in this adolescent period, a physiological transitioning is really very prominent and is manifested, okay, by the changes that are happening in your physical aspect. At this stage, okay, the brain also continues to develop. So there is what we call cognitive growth and development. And cognitive growth and development among adolescents is usually marked by the way they are able to comprehend abstract concepts, such as the concept of freedom and human rights. Okay? And also their belief about morality, about religion and politics are also starting to evolve in these states of development. That is why we can see that there are many kabataan, okay, that are very involved in social issues and concerns, because at this stage, cognitive growth among adolescents is also marked, okay, or is also manifested by the way the youth comprehend with those concepts, especially the concepts that are related to social issues and concerns. And this is also the stage when young men and women begin to ask questions about the status quo, about the present situation, okay? About the way things happen, and usually counter questions or situations with a challenging question of why not. Okay? In here, the youth or the adolescent become idealistic. And idealism is very prominent among adolescents, and also their inclination toward becoming very self-conscious and egocentric. Okay? Because at this point and at this stage, okay, an adolescent begins to question the way things work in the society. Kaya nga kung minsan, hindi lang minsan, madalas, sinasabi ng karamihan, ang mga kabataan ay pasaway, ang mga kabataan ay masyadong nangingialam, is because they are really experiencing this kind of change, okay, in this specific stage or period that is happening in their selves or in their life. Okay? They become so idealistic and involved also, okay, into social issues and concerns of the society. Not only that there is growth and development in their physiological aspect or physical aspect, but also cognitively, okay, they are undergoing changes that makes them question, reflect, okay, and think upon about the events or situations that are happening in the society. Reckless behavior also happens or occur, okay, during this period. And reckless behavior of adolescents are sometimes attributed to the development of their brains, since their ability to make plans and see the consequences of their actions are not yet fully developed, unlike in adults. That's according to Pace and Rosenberg. Okay? And in this stage, experimentation is really a common activity for adolescents as they search for their identity. They wanted, for example, to be treated as adults, and they wanted and want to see adult behavior as something to emulate. But unfortunately, they also try to copy or mimic negative behaviors like smoking, drinking, which are perceived as marks of manhood in some cultures like ours. Okay? Not only that, there are also challenges that may really hinder, okay, the positive development of an adolescent. Like, for example, okay, breaking the rules, the norms, or the laws of the society, and worse, pregnancy, and the use of prohibited drugs. Okay? Adolescents also search for social groups with whom they find common interests to further validate their chosen identity. For example, different clothing and fashion styles are the most obvious ways in expressing the independence of adolescents, okay, and in asserting their unique selves. In high school, okay, various organizations are being offered to students for them to choose from, like joining the organizations, okay, that will really push and put forward the continuing formation of self-identity of an adolescent in a positive and rightful manner. Okay? Yan. And socializing among male and female adolescents also occur in this space, okay, in this stage. Lalong-lalo na ngayon, we have the social media. Diba? Karamihan sa atin, we interact. Karamihan sa inyo, okay, interact with other adolescents through social media. Yan. And adolescents are already online friends before they could meet face-to-face. Tama ba yun? Okay, that you are already online friends before you meet face-to-face. Yan. But this is also a part of growing up in this stage of adolescence. It is really important for you to search your identity, okay, from social groups. But let us be reminded that joining this kind of organization must be for your good, okay, must be to further develop you into becoming mature and a law-abiding citizen of the society. Now, aside from searching for social groups to validate the identity of an adolescent, okay, that adolescent also undergoes sexual experimentation, and it happens in this stage. Okay? The problem is that due to the underdeveloped cognitive and affective capacities of the adolescent, and there is a lack of education of the matter, okay, of sexual experimentation, this experimentation sometimes end up in a disaster. You know what I mean? Huh? We already heard so many stories of adolescents who are already becoming young parents because of this kind of experimentation. So what is needed here is right information and right education so that our young adolescents are really guided, okay, into becoming adult. Okay? But they must have really to enjoy first becoming a part of the adolescent stage. But let us be reminded again that enjoying this state does not mean you enjoy it, okay, beyond the limit or beyond what we call the activities that must have to be done by an adolescent. That's not correct. Okay? You enjoy it because you are trying to develop yourself to become a mature person. That's why you are undergoing this kind of changes in your adolescenthood. Now, let us talk about adolescence and social behavior. How do adolescents behave when they are outside their homes or houses? Is it the same inside the house? And what attitude and behavior they show when they are with their friends or when they are in a social group. Okay? Now, I tell you, every culture has a representation of how their adolescent population behave over decades. Okay? Yan. Now, in the 1950s, teenage rebellion was popularized in the US. Okay? With the beatnik movement at its forefront. You look, what do we mean by beatnik movement? Actually, this was a popular genre during the 1950s. Okay? And popular rebel teen stars such as James Dean, okay? Yan, James Dean. Okay? And writer Jack, I don't know how to pronounce the, Jack Koryak, I think this one, okay? Became the icons of that era. Okay? During the 1950s, wherein teenage rebellion was popularized. Now, in the Philippines, during the 1950s, local teenagers copied their American counterparts. Okay? It was the era of the low-waist gang. Kung merong teen rebellion sa America, in the Philippines, we have what we call the low-waist gang, where actors wore tight-fitting jeans and pompadour. Okay? Hairstyles slop with pomade. Ayan. Until lang naman, meron tayo atang pomade Mga Beps na yan, di ba? Mga pen shop. But it was really happened. It really happened during the 1950s. Yung magkakaroon ng fitting jeans, parang binabalik din natin ngayon. Diba? And those actors that were very popular during that time, so pa sila, hindi sila FPJ, at saka si, hirap, para sa mahirap. Yan. The Lowest Gang, starring Fernando Po Jr. That was during the 1950s. Ganyan ang style ng mga kabataan during that time. At kung ano nakikita naman ng mga ordinary adolescents sa mga popular actors during that time, they also mimic, okay, the style. Okay, yung pananamit, yung galaw, okay, yung paraan ng pag-aayos ng buhok. That was the popular thing that happened in the 1950s among our adolescents. Now, toward the new millennium, okay, the new adolescents who were born from the last years of the 1980s to early 2000s became as the millennials. Parte pa ba kayo ng millennials o hindi na? Pinanganak ba kayo noong 2000? Or baka 2001 na kayo? Okay? Ayan. Now, this millennial, okay, this generation was born in the midst of great boom in technology. Okay? And those adolescents who were born here were called digital natives. Okay? Yan. The previous generation was referred as digital immigrants, having migrated from non-digital to digital technology. Yan. And the social lives and behaviors of the millennials are driven by technology and their social interactions. Okay? And these social interactions are dictated by their use of social networks, mobile phones, and other gadgets. Okay? Sa inyo ngayon, at our present time, social phenomenon like selfie, di ba? Hashtag, PPAP, Apple Pen, sumikat yung mga yan, di ba? Ngayon, mga TikTok na, bang, 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 di ba? Yan, it happened. And it's still happening in your generation today. Therefore, the development of the identity of adolescents today is being influenced by technology compared to the stage of development of the Filipino adolescents during the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, up to 2000. Okay? Ibang-iba yung mga factors na nakaka-influensya talaga, okay, in the development of an adolescent because of the changing time and of the changing world. Okay, so much for the stage of adolescence. And this time, we are going to discuss about the skills and tasks naman, okay, that are appropriate for adolescents. Yan. And in this topic, you will become aware of the tasks and skills that adolescents needs to learn in order for them to grow into well-rounded young adults. Okay? Yan. Now, according to the study conducted by LifeWorks Center at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, what are expected to American adolescents are the following. This is an American setup, okay? But it can also be applied in our society, okay? Into the Filipino youth. Yan. Now, what are expected to adolescents? First, according to the project, is that adolescents must have to adjust to sexually maturing bodies and feelings. Okay? Meaning to say, being aware of the bodily changes happening, managing sexual feelings, and engaging in what we call healthy sexual behaviors. And when adolescents learn to adjust their own development, okay, the healthy results would be establishing sexual identity and developing skills for romantic and meaningful relationships. So if you are successful in adjusting to sexually maturing bodies and feelings, and you are doing the right thing, even if you feel this kind of urge, what I mean, you know what I mean, okay? Then you will develop what we call a healthy sexual identity. Because adjusting to your maturing body would mean respecting your body and not allowing someone to disrespect it. In that way, you will really establish what we call a healthy sexual identity. And in that way, you can also build a romantic and meaningful relationship later on as you go along the way of building relationship with other people. The second task that is expected to an adolescent is to develop and apply abstract thinking skills. This means that an adolescent effectively understands and coordinates abstract ideas. Not only that, but the adolescent also thinking out possibilities, trying out theories, and planning ahead. Okay? So that whenever there are problems that will confront him or her along the way, then that adolescent can really overcome those kind of trials or circumstances. This means then that on the part of the adolescent, there is what we call a reflection on how and what the adolescent is thinking and coming out with his own personal philosophies or her own personal ideas that will make him or help him overcome the challenges of being an adolescent. Okay? This is very important then, that developing and applying abstract thinking skills will put the adolescent into a situation that will make him overcome, okay, the challenges of being an adolescent. The third task is equally important for an adolescent to do and to develop. Okay? And this third task is develop and apply a new perspective on human relationship. Meaning that developing the capacity for compassion by learning how to put themselves, by learning how the adolescents put themselves in somebody else's shoes in order for them to understand other people's feelings and perspective. And doing that, okay, looking at relationship in different perspectives can develop in learning how to resolve conflict in relationships. Okay? The fourth task is to develop and apply new coping skills in areas such as decision making, problem solving, and conflict resolution. This means that adolescents must acquire new thinking capabilities that will help them engage in more creative strategies for problem solving and also decision making and resolving conflict. The adolescents then should be able to project toward the future and see the consequences of their decisions. The fifth task is identify meaningful moral standards, values, and belief systems. Because of their idealism, adolescents develop more complex understanding of morality, justice, and compassion. And this will lead to the formation of adolescents' own belief systems that will guide their decisions and behavior. The sixth task is understand and express more complex emotional experiences. This means that adolescents are becoming more in touch with their emotions and see the complex variances among strong emotions and feelings. Because understanding the emotions and feelings of others, okay, and his or her own emotions are very important. And learning how to detach themselves from emotional situations whenever needed is equally important in order for the adolescent not to be put into a situation that emotionally they may hurt themselves or they may hurt others. Sabi nga nila, you cannot really fix a problem when the two of you are at your heights of emotions. So, huwag magpapadala sa emosyon, baka lumagpas ka sa limitasyon. The seventh task is form friendships that are mutually close and supportive. Peer influence is very strong among adolescents, and this should be able to steer an adolescent towards productive and positive relationships. Okay? Remember that peer influence must bring you as an adolescent towards productive and positive relationship. And learning how to trust others is an important task also for an adolescent to develop. And in forming friendship, you choose a true friend, okay, as one who walks in when the rest of the world walks out. That will bring the best in you and will put you into a productive and positive relationship. The eighth task is establish key aspects of identity. Be encouraged to develop their own healthy self-concepts that reflect their uniqueness in relation to themselves, their families and friends, and with the bigger community. In this task, okay, the adolescents are being allowed to trust themselves. And in that way, they can become a better member of the society. In that way, they will become a contributing member of the society. So never stop believing in yourself. Do what makes you happy. Do what makes you become yourselves. But always remember that in doing these things, okay, in doing things that will make you happy, you must also have to consider other people around you. Okay? You may do things on your own if you think it is for your own good, but also be mindful that no one is being hurt when you do things in your own way. In that way, you are establishing your aspect or key aspects of identity. The ninth task is to meet the demands of increasingly mature roles and responsibility. This means that it is important for the adolescent who is considered to be an emerging adult to acquire skills and knowledge that will provide him or her with meaningful careers and jobs later on, and to live up to the expectations regarding commitment to family, community, and nation building. Meaning to say that meeting the demands of increasingly mature roles, the adolescent is also considering not only himself or herself, but also the expectations regarding his or her commitment to family, okay, and to the community and nation building. It is a matter of giving back, okay, of the positive things that you got from your society. Ayan. So you must have to meet the demands also of increasingly mature roles. Hindi habang buhay batang isip ka or isip bata. Okay? Habang tumatagal, sabi nga nila, okay, mas lalong nagiging mature ang isang tao dapat as the person goes along human development. The last but not the least task, the 10th task, is renegotiate relationships with adults in parenting roles. It is a fact that adolescent stage sees the movement toward independence and maturity. There will be times that adolescents will really seek for independence. And the role of the parent is to give also the adolescent permission to have alone time if they are asking for that, okay? Or to hang out with friends and to participate in other typical teen activities that they know will be good for the adolescent in his development or in her development towards maturity. Okay? Aside from that, parents should also check in often to provide the adolescent with opportunities to ask questions and to remind them that there are caring adults in their lives. Okay? In that way, okay, we empower the youth, the adolescents, to expand their support network by helping them to identify and reach out to community resources. Okay? So if you think you need to renegotiate your relationship with your parent, okay, in parenting role, do not hesitate to tell them, but in a nice way. Okay? You must have to ask them, okay, if you think you need sometimes to be alone, or you need to go out sometimes with your friend, let them know. Okay? As long as also you know to yourself that it will not bring you to danger, but it will bring you to becoming more mature person if you're going to experience those kinds of being independent. Okay? Now, Filipino authors Corpus and his companions in their book Child and Adolescent Development identified similar developmental tasks that a Filipino adolescent needs to learn. The first task is developing occupational skills. This means that there must be skills or development of skills that can help adolescents develop responsibility as a preparation for gainful employment ahead. The second task is self-reliance. The ability to identify their own skills and knowledge, capabilities, and resources to engage in meaningful activities and not rely too much on others. In this task, the adolescent, with the help of their ability to identify skills and knowledge, will also make them self-reliant individuals or becoming independent most of the time and not too much reliance on others. The third task is ability to manage their finances. Be able to discern what is different between wants and needs, and be able to learn self-control when handling their finances. As early as possible, according to Corpus, the adolescents should learn financial literacy through various means available to them. Okay? Kibasa na lang kung ano nandyan sa PowerPoint presentation ko about the ability to manage your finances. The fourth task is social responsibility. Adolescents should also be able to see beyond themselves, take into consideration the greater community around them, and see their role in improving and developing these communities, serving as agents of change. Meaning to say that aside from personal responsibility, the adolescent must also be aware of his social responsibility as a member of the society. And that he must have to be, or he must have to treat himself or herself as a contributing member of the society or as an agent of change for the betterment of the community. The fifth task is mature work orientation. In here, there must be a development of pride in what they do and raise standards of excellence in their quality of their work. It means to say that an adolescent must have to develop his maturity regarding on how the adolescent work, okay? On how the adolescent will do the task given to him, so that later on, when he is already in his own job, okay, he will also consider the fact and the learnings that he got, okay, during his adolescenthood and applying it into his work orientation as an adult. Okay? This will really make the adolescent become more responsible in dealing and doing work given to him or to her. And the sixth is personal responsibility. To be fully responsible for their own decisions and actions by owning them. Become aware of the repercussions or results of the decisions they make and be mature enough to own these results. And the adolescent must have to refrain from putting blame on others for the result of their decisions and actions. Meaning to say that in personal responsibility, the decisions that had been put into action by an adolescent, whatever the outcome will be, the adolescent must have to accept the consequence. Okay? By not putting blame, his fault, her fault, their fault, not me. And being matured, okay, an adolescent will embrace his or her own mistake, owning the mistake, okay, and learning from it, and will do things better the next time around. And the seventh task is positive attitude toward work. In the book by Lebanese poet Khalil Gibran, The Prophet, he wrote, "Work is love made visible." So, developing a healthy and positive attitude toward work means that we seek work as an expression of our love for people who are important to us. We are working, we are doing this, okay, whether you are a student, okay, whether you are a daughter or a son, you are doing your work because there are people who surround us and love us, and we must also love them back. Okay? By loving our work. And one can learn new things and grow to become highly skilled, knowledgeable, and loving person if he or she sees work as a way towards self-improvement and an expression of love for his or her significant others. And the significant others are the people who loves you. Your family, your siblings, okay, your parents, your relatives, okay, if you have a romantic relationship, then your partner, okay, and learning new things and having this positive attitude toward work will really let them know that you love them and you are doing this not only because of yourself, not only because it is for yourself, but also because they are, okay, for them also. The work that you are doing is also for them because you love them too. Okay? There are additional lists of developmental tasks and skills that a Filipino adolescent should acquire, but that will be your reading assignment now. Okay? So with this, thank you for listening. I hope this lecture video will help you also to be reminded of the things that you must have to know about becoming an adolescent, a responsible adolescent. Thank you. God bless.